one of the major ones that we are following for you is the FAA cutting flights by 10% across the board in some major airports all across the country. And if you're traveling soon, this is not the type of messaging you want to see, no doubt, showing that the FAA reducing the air traffic by 10% across 40 high-volume markets beginning tomorrow. The impact will affect travelers in 27 states and Washington, D.C. as well. And here's just a breakdown of the 40 airports affected. And I know this will be impacting just so many across the country. I want to bring in our next guest to help break it all down from going.com. This is Katy Nastro. Katy, great to have you on here. And first off, what are you guys seeing with these upcoming cuts that are starting already tomorrow?
We're seeing a lot of travelers asking the question, am I going to have my flight impacted? Is it going to get canceled? What do I do now? Do I make alternate plans for Thanksgiving, one of the busiest weeks out of the entire year to travel? There are still a lot of unknowns. We don't have any clear indication what exact flights are going to get canceled. But now we're hearing that the administration wants all airlines at any given airport to cut up to 4% of flights tomorrow. That hasn't been confirmed, but this just goes to show that this scenario or the situation is really moving fast, and travelers have a higher likelihood now to see impacts, not just at an airport that is on the list of airports that will reduce flights by 4% starting tomorrow, but also at smaller airports that feed into these larger hubs. I mean, these 40 airports are operating roughly 70% of scheduled flights on any given day. So it touches more than just the travelers that have flights departing out of them. So it's widespread, could potentially cause travel chaos.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it seems like the regional flights really going to be hurting here. Give us maybe some examples of just how fast this could sort of snowball, especially for those feeder regional airlines.
Yeah, we have no confirmation whether or not which particular regional flights are going to get impacted, but they have a higher likelihood right now. And, with some of these major airports that need those feeder flights, say, you're looking at LaGuardia, JFK, these need that Northeast feed from various places in New England to operate elsewhere. I mean, any large airport can really be impacted by these reductions in flights, even if it's just regional flights. Now, I will say a bright spot is if you do have a flight on, say, a larger sort of heavily trafficked route, so New York to LA, for example, a hub-to-hub route, you're less likely to see the impacts. Yet, even still, with the reduction of flights, this doesn't mean that there's going to be a reduction of, say, delays due to air traffic control calling out. That can happen at any given time. That doesn't mean that there's going to be fewer people in a TSA line. We're still expected to see some of these long TSA wait times due to the fact that essential workers can call out at any given time. There's no pattern there. We want people to be aware that there is likely going to just be travel chaos regardless of the flight and airport that you're flying out of.
Yeah, that's such good details there, Katy. And I think, across the board, it's going to be much different because the airline industry and really travelers understand when it's weather impacts and other situations. But when you have a political division, I think that is where people are going to say, okay, enough's enough when it really comes to their air travel.
Yeah, look, we saw in the most recent shutdown, 2018, 2019, or the second longest shutdown in history, travel was really the linchpin there. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is starting to make moves in Washington because it impacts, not just travelers, it impacts the airline industries directly, and they have to face travelers head on. They're on the front lines, and it can cause a lot of frustration. And the essential workers, we cannot forget about them working day to day without a paycheck. And it is, again, the theme of this is anything can happen. The longer this lasts, though, the higher the likelihood the impacts start to ripple to even more people.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And lastly here, We are just weeks away from Thanksgiving, and that is going to put more pressure to try to figure this out because if we get into the week before Thanksgiving and you're still seeing these reductions, talk about some issues that are going to be felt at airports.
Yeah, look, one of the busiest times out of the entire year for travel occurs in the next few weeks. Specifically, the Sunday after Thanksgiving sees 3 million people on average. And that's in recent years coming out of the pandemic, where we've actually seen more and more people travel than ever before. It is likely we see 3 million people across multiple days, according to TSA data. However, with this shutdown looming and no real end in sight, we don't have a crystal ball to say that this will continue through the shutdown. But if it does, that means that there are millions and millions of people every day that are going to be impacted or have a higher likelihood of being impacted, and fewer seats to get rebooked on if they encounter some sort of significant delay, as well as cancellations. There's not an endless supply of seats due to those. So we want people to start to look for a backup plan in terms of maybe a refundable ticket, using points and miles to book a ticket that you can cancel day of. Just make sure you cancel it before that flight takes off, and just start to think what their options are, but not necessarily make any drastic changes quite yet, because we still need to see how this shakes out through the weekend and how travelers are able to manage the reductions so far.
Yeah, no doubt it'll be a weekend to watch as to see how everything is handled. Katy Nastro with Going.com. Appreciate all of the updates and insights. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me. Safe travels, really.